On New Year's Day, in a quiet riverside town, a Buddhist monk and an old boatman uncover the sorrow at the heart of a river that keeps taking lives until compassion becomes the only exorcism that works. One New Year's morning dawn of the first day of the year. The temple courtyard was all breath fog and thin mist, the world holding its lungs. Brother Thien fap older than he looked, steadier than most, swept leaves into a low, careful pile, and fed them to a small flame. The leaves flared and then went to ash. Everything returns to dust, he thought. Even the things we clutch hardest. Inside the main hall, a dozen visitors whispered prayers. Health, money, new jobs, easy years. Brother Thien didn't judge. Begging for good fortune was the ancient custom. Learning to handle misfortune was the harder path. That was when he noticed a young woman. She wore a simple pink blouse and black trousers, country clothes. Not city fashion, a silver pendant of guanyan glinting at her throat. Unlike everyone else, she didn't bow, didn't mutter wishes. She just stared at the Buddha's calm face, unblinking, as if they were speaking without words. She pressed her palms together once, then slipped away behind the hall. Into the garden, Brother Thien. Let the novice monks handle the incense and offerings and walked out back with a lantern. He followed the thin sound he'd already guessed he'd find crying quiet, then wrenching by the old banyan near the wall. People say you shouldn't cry on the year's first morning, he said gently, not stepping too close. Whatever brought you here must hurt more than superstition. The girl startled, wiped her face, bowed in panic. I didn't mean any disrespect. Venerable, please forgive the temple dory's compassion, he said, smiling. If crying lightens the heart, it's permitted. Don't you want to ask why? If you wish to tell me, you will, he said. If you don't, I won't force it. She held his gaze for one long, exhausted beat eyes, brimming with something like grief cooked down into anger, then turned and was gone. By the time he raised the lantern, she'd vanished into fog. A strange chill slid through him. Not the winter breeze, something lonelier to the blind songstresses. Ghost Know Your A considered one of the most chilling revenge tales about the bloody vengeance of a blind female musician's spirit during the Kaya era, 1716 to 1736. A samurai named Hatsumi Kanji from Kitakuni province was on his annual required journey to Edo. He stopped at a roadside inn to rest. In his room he heard a voice singing more exquisite than any he had ever heard coming from a neighboring chamber. Unbeknownst to him, the singer was a ghost, a blind woman who traveled performing with a shamisen. Assuming such a voice must belong to a beauty, Hatsumi decided to possess her. Finding her room, he hid in the dark to wait. When the ghost returned, Hatsumi sprang from hiding and forced himself upon her, but strangely, she offered no resistance. At dawn, Hatsumi was horrified to discover the woman's face was plain, even unattractive, not the beauty he had imagined. She smiled at him, a pure, happy smile, believing she had finally found love. Nothing could be further from the truth. Hatsumi concocted a plan, taking her along toward Edo. On a lonely mountain path, he pushed the blind woman into a ravine to kill her, then went on his way, confident he had disposed of the problem cleanly. A year later, Hatsumi had all but forgotten. Again traveling to Edo, he stopped for the night at a small mountain temple. That night, the ghost's ghost appeared before him. You've forgotten last autumn, haven't you? You took my body and cast me aside like trash. I had no eyes, but now I see your heart clearly. She seized his legs and yanked him from bed. He struggled, but he was no match for her fury. She dragged him to the temple graveyard, stopped before one grave, curled her lip in a sneer, then embraced him and thrust him down into the earth. Monks, having heard the commotion, came running, following the trail to the cemetery. They dug with shovels and soon uncovered Hotsumi's corpse entwined in the skeleton of a woman. Fate had led Hotsumi to the very temple where the ghostly bodies had never been found in the ravine. Her spirit had waited there for the faithless man until the day she claimed him. 3. The cry on Twin Shrine Hill Night rose hard and fast along the banks. TR, the fisherman who worked the river by moonlight, had his rickety stilt hut lit by a single buzzing bulb. He'd sworn he didn't fear ghosts. Having never met them, he hummed old poems to the water and pulled on his net ropes till his shoulders burned. Then he heard it, crying from the little hill with 2 abandoned shrines, the place locals avoided after dark. A woman's sobs, thin and breaking and a child's laugh threading through it. It didn't make sense. No one brought a toddler out here at midnight. He beached his skiff and climbed toward the old shrines. A red nightlight glowed inside one, cheap and eerie. As he rounded the jackfruit tree, he saw them. A woman crouched on the low wall, hair hanging over her face. A naked bald child at her feet, giggling. "Miss, are you lost?" "The boy is freezing," TR said, stepping forward. The child's head snapped toward him. "Clothes," it hissed, voice raw. "Give me clothes." The woman looked up, one eye, sharp as a blade, cut off her head. "If you help, come with us," she said, and laughed a laugh that didn't belong in any human throat. TR ran. He bounded on the nearest farmhouse. The owner tone, big and startled, swung, opened the door and cracked TR in the temple with a bamboo pole on instinct. Key. By the time they'd revived TR and he'd told his story, fear had already rippled across the neighborhood. The 3 of them crept back to the shrines with a lamp. No woman, no child, just soggy joss paper and a heap of torn paper armor by the jackfruit tree. TR, rattled but stubborn, rode back to check his net. It was heavy. For a heartbeat he felt greedy joy. Then he saw what he'd hauled up. Not fish. A body that by morning the police called it a drunken accident. The village didn't buy it. 5 dead in 4 months was not an accident. People stayed indoors after dusk. Mothers called their children home early. TR left town. Whispers coiled and thickened. Someone finally said it out loud at Auntie Boy's tea shop. "We need a specialist." A self-styled exorcist named Mr. Ann showed up at dusk wearing a mustard yellow costume straight out of an old hopping vampire movie. He set a tin basin of thick black liquid on the shrine table dog's blood by the smell of stubby candles, scribbled talismans, and began chanting words even he didn't fully understand. Grains of rice spattered the jackfruit tree. "Leave this place. Depart," he shouted. Then the basin tipped, splashing him. A pale shape unstitched from the tree, eyes red, tongue long and purpled. The air screamed. Mr. An had tried to spit fire. The fuel splashed back onto his robe. He went up like a torch. By the time anyone reached him, there was nothing to save. Down at the landing, Grandpa Bay sat with his boat and his fiddle, playing a thin, grieving tune. He played like he'd known this ending all along. For the Kitha temple filled at night now. Fear does that. People want a light on somewhere in the dark. Brother Thien was brewing tea when a novice poked his head in. "Grandpa Bay is here to see you." Bay came into the garden with his instrument, tucked under one arm. He drank 1 cup, then another, before he spoke. "You've heard the stories," he said. "I've heard enough to know the river has a reason," Brother Thien said. "Spirits don't linger without a hook." Bay nodded, eyes on the koi pond. "This started on New Year's Day. I was by the bend when a young woman asked me to ferry her across. It was late, her face wrong kind of pale. I stalled, asked questions. She broke and told me the truth. She'd fallen for a man named Soflashi Doki. He took her savings, left her with a baby coming and no place to go. Shame followed her like a stray dog. said she needed to cross. I told her to wait while I went to Auntie Boy's to find her food. He swallowed hard. When I got back, my boat was already in the river. I borrowed TR's skiff and rowed like the devil. She wasn't there. Only a note cursing the man who'd ruined Poland, something she asked me to keep safe. I spent the night diving and found her in the morning. He looked at his hands. To avoid a spectacle on New Year's, I buried her by the jackfruit at Twin Shrine Hill. I've tended incense there, but the river keeps taking. Brother Thien's stomach dropped. Do you still have what she left? Bay dug into his layered shirt and placed a small thing on the table, a silver chain with a guanyon pendant, the same one the girl had worn, in the temple. Brother Thien saw again those eyes in the morning light. Bottomless grief braced into fury. He understood what he'd missed. Tonight, he said, we go together. 6. The talking skull. This story dates to around 1300 BCE, as transmitted in Nara's Tutankhamun temple, home to a monk named Diti from Koma, northern Chosen Peninsula. Known for compassion, Diti once spent his savings to build a public bridge over the Yuji River, earning deep respect. Traveling through Nara's mountain valleys with his disciple Manryo, Dat noticed a human skull lying by the road, caked in mud and clearly kicked about. A little flesh still clung to the bone. Feeling pity, Dat said to Manryo, see this pitiable skull. Whoever it was, even in death, it's kicked along. At least we can lift it away from the path to spare it such shame. Manryo obeyed, placing the skull in a tree off the road and covering it with branches. That New Year's Eve, a man arrived at Kankoji Zei's gate, asking to see me, polite and proper. He was shown in. Though Manryo had never met him, the man's face felt strangely familiar. I owe you a great debt, the man said. You did me a profound kindness. I wish to repay your generosity. I have nothing on me now, but please come to my home so I can repay you properly. Moved by his earnest plea, Manryo agreed. At the man's house, an extravagant feast awaited. Please, eat what you like, eat your fill. The host devoured food with gusto, and Manryo, still young, succumbed to earthly delights. Very well, I'll hear the reason later. For now, I'll enjoy the feast. He ate ravenously. Dishes piled high, at last he could eat no more. Suddenly, violence flashed across the host's face. Revered Manryo, my brother who murdered Miha's come. We must flee at once. What are you saying? Manryo, Stammer. That, the man explained, voice shaking. Years ago, my brother and I went into business together. I saved 18 can of gold. He saved nothing and decided to kill me to seize my gold. My body rotted in the woods until only a skull remained. Passers-by nearly kicked me aside. Horrible. But then you came and rescued me from filth and humiliation. I didn't know how to repay such a favor. So tonight I invited you here to treat you to this feast. Astonished, Manryo still wanted to avoid the murderer. He sprang up to flee, but too late. The door creaked open. Someone entered. Manryo froze, but it was only the murderer's wife and their son. Seeing a monk standing in her own parlor, she screamed, "Ah, a monk! Why are you in my house?" Manryo recounted every detail he had heard. Turning for the ghost to confirm, he found no one behind him. The wife was as shocked as Mati. It contradicted everything she had been told. Sternly, she glared at the boy. Your father was vile. Pray for your murdered uncle's spirit and beg forgiveness for your father's crime. The boy obeyed, banishing his father's image from his heart and replacing it with reverence for his uncle. 7. The strong man's ghost. Chikaramochi, Irei, long ago in the Ian 1670 to 1683. A farmer lived with his very unusual wife in the tiny village of Mikoharabara, nestled in a remote mountain valley in an SH modern Ishikawa. She possessed prodigious strength, people say, to fight off 4 or 5 grown men alone. Even the strongest cannot escape illness. That winter, she fell sick and died. On the 17th day after her death, she returned as a Yurei and haunted her husband to death. No one knows what he did to earn her curse, but it happened. Even then, she was not satisfied. Her ghost terrorized the village. At last, a traveling merchant named Sakuzo stopped in hearing the story. He wondered if there was a hole in her grave zone. He thought that her restless spirit still plagued the village, even after killing her husband. Villagers checked and found a deep burrow leading into her tomb. They filled it and sealed it with a great stone. It helped, but not fully. The woman's malice latched onto Sakuzo. She tormented him as she had her husband besieged. Sakuzo made pilgrimage to a nearby shrine and borrowed a famed sword kept there. A charm against Yurei said to subdue demons. Carrying it always, he was no longer troubled and returned the sword. On his journey home over steep passes, he felt a strange presence from behind. Before he could react, he was hoisted 10 meters into the air and hurled into the ravine. He struck, bloodied and unconscious, as if dead. Satisfied she had killed him, the farmer's wife vanished forever. Kate. The black hair in the capital lived a poor samurai who was summoned to serve a distant lord. He eagerly accepted, abandoning his wife to live with another woman for many years. When his service ended, he returned to the capital and found himself missing his former wife. At midnight he came to their old home. Autumn moonlight washed the house in a cold glow. The gate stood open. Inside, his wife sat quietly alone. She showed no anger or grievance toward the man who had wronged her. Instead, she welcomed and congratulated him on his return after so long. Overcome, the samurai swore to stay by her side forever, never to part again. Content with her happy face, he embraced her and fell asleep at dawn. Brilliant sunlight filled the house, brighter than last night's moon. He looked down to find that, instead of holding his wife, he clutched a dried corpse skin clinging to bone wrapped in a cascade of long black hair. He burst into the neighbor's house. What happened to the woman next door? She was abandoned by her faithless husband. Grief made her ill, and she died just this past summer. With no one to tend her or arrange a funeral, her body still lies there. Nayan, the ghost woman of Azuawakatsu. Azuawakatsu was buried long ago in Azuawakatsu, modern Fukushima. A man named Iyo lived with his wife. One night, the ghost of a woman appeared in their home at first. The dead woman whom neither of them knew appeared in the garden, knocking on the closed door and calling the wife's name. Iyo's wife, a stern, no-nonsense type, shouted back, "Who are you and what do you want?" There was no answer, only the Yurei repeatedly calling her name. Prepared for this, the wife grabbed a special box near their futon and took out an ofuda, paper talisman inscribed by a local priest with spells to repel spirits. She hurled it at the ghost, which vanished like smoke. But the ghost would not leave them. The next night she appeared in the kitchen, rising from the hearth flame. Another night she roamed the garden, ringing a bell with a wooden mallet. This continued for 4 days. Knowing she could not subdue the spirit, the wife went to a shrine to pray for divine protection over their home. That night, peace returned. The ghost did not appear. It was the 8th day since the first sighting. Apparently, the protection lasted only 1 night. The ghost now manifested directly in their bedroom, hovering above their pillows, then slowly descending to the foot of the bed to stroke the wife's feet with a cold, dead hand. That was too much. Iyo and his wife moved house at once. The woman's identity remains a mystery. None of the family had seen her before, nor did they learn what she wanted or why she came. 10. The Ghost of Oyuki. The Ghost of Oyuki is Japan's most famous and influential ghost painting. The image that fixed the look of a ghost in the Japanese mind. The pale woman with long black hair and a white kimono existed in legend, but this particular form, especially the lack of feet, could shade. Under the brush of Maruyama Kyo, though famous as the ghost of Oyuki, the Japanese title is Yorazu, Oyuki no Mabaroshi portrait of a Yurei, the phantom of Oyuki. According to notes on an old document, box apparently copied by a previous owner named Shimizuta, young painter had a lover named Oyuki, a geisha, at the Tominaga house in Utsu, Gemi province, modern Shiga. Oyuki died young. The note does not say how or when Kyo grieved deeply. One night in 1750, during the Edo period, Maruyama Kyo awoke from a fitful sleep to see a young woman floating at the foot of his bed. She was beautiful and deathly pale. Her pallid skin showed beneath a loose, white funerary kimono. In stark contrast were her deep black eyes, staring, and her long disheveled black hair spilling over her shoulders. She had no feet. The ghost lingered a moment, then vanished. Kyo leapt up and painted Oyuki exactly as she had appeared. Kyo was already renowned for uncompromising naturalism if he painted something. People believed he had truly seen it. Because of his reputation, when he exhibited the painting and told the story, the Japanese public accepted that this was the true form of a Yurei. They have honored this image ever since.